Hello and welcome, I'm your code monkey. In this lecture we're going to create the plates counter. This one is just going to spawn some plates, which we can then pick up to grab some objects. Okay, so let's begin making the counter as usual. So let's go inside our prefabs, inside our counters, right click the base counter, make a new prefab variant, call it the plates counter. Let's go inside and let's drag the visual for the plates counter. Let's go into scene view so we can see it. Okay, let's duplicate this, make this the selected. Let's go inside and we can actually hide the circle sprite. We only need this one. So on this one, let's modify it for the counter selected. On the selected, let's make it just 1% bigger. And let's add the selected counter visual. Okay, then inside, obviously, drag the reference for the kitchen counter. Okay, that's our basic setup. Now let's make our script to run this. So let's create a brand new C# script for the plates counter. Let's attach the script to the plates counter and open. Okay, now here as usual, let's extend our base counter. And then first let's handle the spawn timer logic. So basically we want to spawn some plates every once amount of time. So let's store a simple float for the spawn plate timer. Then let's make a simple update on timer. Let's increase the spawn plate timer by time.delta. And then just check if it's above a certain maximum. So if it is above something, in this case we're going to have a fixed value. But still, like I mentioned at the very beginning of this course, let us not use magic numbers here. You should never use magic numbers. Instead, if you wanted to make it editable, you could also make it appear as a serialized field. But in my case, for the design that I'm going for, I'm perfectly content with having a fixed value. So just appear, pretty simple, the spawn plate timer max. And let's default it to 4F. And let's use it over here. Okay, great. So this is what we want. However, for spawning, it's actually going to be a bit tricky. The plate is supposed to be a kitchen object. The player should be able to carry the plate. And right now, for the design that we define, is that each kitchen object can only have one parent, and each parent can only have one object. But over here, we want to spawn multiple objects. Now let's quickly see what happens if we try spawning multiple as usual. So let's just go into the kitchen object, spawn a kitchen object, which means we need the plate SO. So let's do it up here. As usual, a serialized field, private, kitchen object SO for the plate kitchen object SO. So we're going to need to make this, and then we're just going to spawn this object on this. Okay, so this is going to throw an error, but still, let's see. Let's first create the object. Over here, let's go inside our scriptable objects, our kitchen objects. Let's create the brand new kitchen object. Call it just the plate. For the object name, this one is a plate. For the sprite, let's go with the plate sprite. And for the prefab, let's make it. So let's duplicate one of these, call it the plate. Let's go inside it, and obviously make sure to save the changes. Then over here, let's drag the plate visual, get rid of the tomato, and on the plate, let's make sure to assign the plate. And finally, let's exit this, let's make sure to save it, and on the plate, let's drag the plate prefab. Okay, so we have the kitchen object SO. Now let's just go inside our plates counter. And over here, let's drag the reference. So the reference to the plate kitchen object. Let's also drag the reference to the counter top point. Then on the selected, drag the reference to our base counter. And finally start off with the selected disabled. Okay, so this should be working. Let's just add a plate counter over here onto our scene. So let's pick up a plates counter and put it somewhere in here over there on the side. So on an X of 7.5, then 0. And let's say on 0 maybe. Let's make sure we have space for one more counter over there. So let's duplicate this empty counter. And let's put it over there, pointing to the side. So this one is on 7.5, 0, and -2. Okay, so now let's just make sure that they perfectly match. So let's put this one on a Z of -0.5. Okay, so let's test. Alright, so here we are, and look at that. And after 4 seconds, yep, there you go, it spawns the object. And then it immediately tried to spawn another one, and there you go, we have the error. Kitchen object parent already has a kitchen object. Basically, the way we designed our game and set up the code assumes that a single counter will only hold a single kitchen object. So we cannot have multiple plates on the same counter. Now, one solution for this problem is actually quite simple. When we spawn the plates, instead, let's not spawn a kitchen object. Instead, we're just going to spawn a dumb visual. Then when the player interacts with the counter, that is when we're going to spawn the proper kitchen object. So let's do that. Although again, let's keep the logic and the visual separate. So over here, let's first just handle the logic. So we just need to keep track of how many plates were spawned. So for that, let's store up here a private int for the plates spawned amount. And let's also do another private int for the plates spawned amount max. And let's say we can spawn at most 4 plates. Okay, so over here, instead of spawning the object, let's first of all actually reset the timer. So let's put it back to 0, 0. And on the plate spawned amount, let's check if this one is under the plate spawn max. And if so, let's go into the plate spawn amount and increase it by 1. Okay, so that's the logic, super simple. Now let's send the visual. So let's first make our script. So let's create a brand new C# script for the plates counter visual. Now let's make sure to add the visual. So let's go inside the prefab, and over here we've got the visual. Let's attach it. Okay, open. Now here, basically the first thing we need is we need to know where to spawn the visuals. So let's actually add a reference to our counter top point. So let's add a serialized field for the private transform for the counter top point. Then let's also add a reference for the prefab we're going to spawn. So let's call it the plate visual prefab. Then here in the editor, let's drag the references. So the counter top point, place it in there. And for the plate visual prefab, let's go up here and find the visuals for the kitchen object. So these are just the visuals, and let's drag the plate visual. So the plate visual, not the plate kitchen object. Okay, now back in the code here, we obviously need to know when a plate is spawned. So let's go into the plates counter and make a nice event. So public event handler as usual, on plate spawned. And down here, let's just fire the event. So we just invoke with this and event args.empty. Okay, that's it, very simple. And then on the other script over here, let's just listen to it, which also means that we need a reference to our counter. So let's add over here the plates counter for the plates counter. So we're going to need to drag the reference, and then on start, let's listen to the on plate spawned event. And when that happens, then let's spawn. So let's call instantiate on the plate visual prefab. Let's put it inside the counter top point. So this is the transform for the plate visual transform. And that's pretty much it. Okay, so like this, it should be working. When the plate is spawned, we should be spawning a brand new visual. Back in the editor, we just need to drag the plates counter reference like that. Let's exit, save the prefab, and let's test. Okay, so here we are, and if we wait for 4 seconds, we should be able to see a plate spawn. Yep, there you go. And if we wait for a little bit more, we should also be able to see some more plates being spawned, except we can't really see them. That's because we're spawning them on the exact same spot every time. But if we pause the game, and over here look in the hierarchy and find the plates counter, and inside the counter top point, yep, we do have 4 visuals. And if we wait for longer, then nope, it's not going to spawn anymore. It's only going to spawn 4 plates. Okay, great. So to solve the visual, let's just offset them by a tiny bit. To know how much we should offset, let's keep track of how many plates have been spawned. So let's store up here on the visual script a list of game object. Call it the plate visual game object list. Let's also make sure to initialize this. So let's do on awake. Let's initialize this list. And then when we spawn them, okay, so here we have the object that we spawned. Now basically we just need to modify the local position. And let's put it on new vector 3. On the X, let's put it on 0. Then on the Z, we're also going to have 0. And then over here on the Y, let's offset it by a certain amount. And basically it's going to be based on how many plates have been spawned. So let's define up here a float for the plate offset Y. Let's put it at, say, 0.1f. And over here, we're going to offset it by this much, multiplied by how many plates have been spawned. So we can go into our visual list.count. So you can do it like this, and then we just need to add it to the list. So let's add this plate visual transform.game object. Okay, so now each game object should be spawned at a different height. So let's see. So here we are, and if we wait for 4 seconds, we should be able to see a plate, and there you go. And now after 4 seconds, we should be able to see another one placed slightly above, and yep, there it is. Okay, great. So everything is spawning perfectly, both in the logic as well as the visual. Now let's actually pick up a plate. So on the plates counter, as usual, let's implement the interact. So let's do a public, let's override the interact function. And now for picking up, let's first see if the player is actually empty-handed. So if, and we check the player has kitchen object. So if the player does not have a kitchen object, then the player is empty-handed. Okay, great. Then let's see if we have a plate that we can give them. So if the plate spawned amount, if it is bigger than 0, then there's at least one plate here. And if so, let's give it to the player. So how we do that is, well, over here for the logic, let's just increase it by 1. Then let's actually spawn the object. So on the kitchen object, let's spawn the plate kitchen object as so, and spawn it on the player. And finally, we just need to update the visuals. So let's make another event. So up here on plate spawned and on plate removed. Okay, we have this event. And then down here, let's just, whenever the player picks it up, let's invoke this with this and event args.empty. Okay, great. So now in the visual, let's listen to this. So we're here on start for the plates counter, listen to this event. And when this event happens, we just want to destroy the very last plate. So let's grab the game object for the plate game object. And we're basically just going to go into our list. So the plate visual game object list. And let's pick up the very last one. So let's go into the list.count -1. So this is going to be the very last element of the list. Then let's remove this one from the list. So plate.remove this one that we just grabbed. And then we simply call destroy on this one. All right, so that's it, super simple. So over here on the plates counter, we do all of our checks. We cut it down by 1. We spawn the actual kitchen object and we fire the event. And over here, the event listens and updates the visual. Okay, let's test. So here we are, let's wait for a plate to be spawned. And when it's spawned, there it is. I'm going to pick it up. And yep, there you go, the player is now carrying a plate. Let's drop it here. And there you go, there's another one. Now let's wait for a bunch more to be spawned. Okay, so the plates counter is full. Now if I pick up, it should only eliminate the last visual. Pick it up, and yep, there you go, it eliminates that one. Now I can drop it in there, and yep, there you go, another one spawn. All right, awesome. Okay, so that's really it for the basics of the plate counter. It periodically spawns some plates, which the player can then pick up. Now in the next lecture, we're going to add the ability for the player to be holding a plate and pick up another object onto the plate.